Hey, beautiful people. Logan here with Presently Impermanent. And in this video, I'm going to be talking about how I overcame my limiting beliefs. Interesting thing that has happened to me many times. I used to struggle with low self-appreciation and low self-worth. And many people, when I have told them this, or when I was going through these periods of low self-worth, they said they couldn't see it. They said I didn't appear to be someone that had that. And the people who knew me a long time ago will now say, oh yeah, of course, it's apparent, because they've seen a shift in me. But for the longest time, I was walking around with a feeling that I was not worth much, that who I was as a person wasn't good enough, that I wouldn't amount to things, that I wasn't worthy of love. All of these things were, I wouldn't say of my own doing, they were how I perceived reality. And of course I can say, oh, I'm a victim to my upbringing, or I could have a plethora of other excuses, but the only thing that I always come back to is it's my responsibility, regardless of how I feel, to make choices to no longer feel that way if I don't want to be there. And so a lot of people will look at me now and I'll tell them that I used to struggle with low self-appreciation and low confidence, and they're shocked. They're like, I couldn't even imagine that. And it makes sense, because when we transmute our pain, it actually becomes our power. So if you are struggling with limiting beliefs, with low self-worth, a lot of people who do struggle with this do have a feeling that there is something inside of them that's bigger than them, that there is something inside of them that can give back to other people, that there is something inside of them that they know within themselves can come out potentially. They just don't know how to do it. And part of transmuting this pain that you might have really has to do with sitting into it more, really looking at it and trying to understand. You don't need to know why it's there, but just trying to understand it. And the things that you understand and work to accept, when you fully accept them, usually things will start to move forward. And I'll tell you this, for 5 years, 25 to 30, and before that I had even worse self-worth, but 25 to 30 were very, very difficult times in my life. Like, very difficult times. I went from having a chronic disease, quitting my job, moving abroad, failing in business in multiple fronts, going through tons of different positions and kind of being a transient. And I've also had very beautiful experiences as well. There's an even longer list of amazing things that have happened to me because I had the courage to step forward. But all of this came from limiting beliefs. The only thing that makes me different, the only way that I could be shooting a video like every day now and putting in more effort and showing up despite what people tell me, is because I continue to show up for myself. And that's actually the highest form of self-appreciation, self-love, and self-confidence that anyone can have, is to show up when you feel like crap. I had to run a marathon one day. It was untrained. And don't ask me why I had to do this. It was in a friend's coaching program, but I run this marathon, right? And the first time I run it, I couldn't get through it. My hip blew out, essentially. It was excruciating pain with every step. And I made it about 7 miles, and despite me trying to move forward, my IT band was at the point where I could barely even walk. And it was swollen for about 2 weeks. It was hard for me to walk for like 2 weeks. I had to get a physio and all this stuff. The next time, because I had to finish the marathon, I had just came back from a retreat and I was playing basketball outside and I burned my feet on the pavement because I was wearing no shoes and the pavement got hot and I didn't notice until they were burned. So I had blisters on my feet and I had to run the marathon with the blisters. I made the decision I was going to do it. I actually ended up super gluing my feet. They invented super glue, I believe, during the Vietnam War, and they used it to put things back together when it wasn't ideal. So I super glued my feet. I start running the marathon. I get about 10 miles in, excruciating pain, a different kind of pain. The other hip started hurting, and then I had a dagger-like pain shooting through my foot. Some of the marathon I had to walk. The whole time I was gritting my teeth, there was a lot of emotions, but I got through it and I finished it. And it's actually, you don't have to go run marathons to start building self-worth, but if you do hard things like this, how could you not have self-worth? If you do challenging things in your life and you make it through it and you prove to yourself that you have done intense things, you've done things that other people can't do, and you don't have to make yourself a David Goggins, and you don't have to become extremely special or anything like that. But you become more you when you challenge yourself. And the thing that separates me from the people who still have self-worth issues is I've always continued to show up for myself. I have had countless times where I've fallen down, but I refuse to not get back up. It's the only option. So it doesn't matter if it's a relationship that's knocked you back and you've created a reality in your head where you're not going to get back you're not going to get back into the game, or you're not going to get back into relationships with the opposite sex. It doesn't matter if you started a career and failed miserably, started a business and failed miserably. It doesn't matter. None of that stuff matters. The only thing that matters is that you show up for yourself and do the things that you want to do. And I'll tell you this, the reason why I'm confident now is because I've done a lot of shit. I've done a lot of things that other people are not willing to do. And there are a lot of people that don't need to do this work. I know plenty of people who they had a great dad and they had a great mom. Not that that's the prerequisite. There's some people with terrible dads, terrible moms who still have incredible lives. I'm talking about people who their perspective is full of confidence and they don't have self-doubt. I didn't have that. I always had voices in my head essentially telling me I wouldn't be good enough. And every time I did something, I felt I needed to get to the next level. And I was chasing the future to get out of my present reality. And eventually I kept showing up enough and doing new things and experiencing new things to where I started learning more and more and more about myself. And as I learned more, I started to let go of the old belief patterns that I had, to the point where I was able to remove identities that were holding me back from my true self. The first big shift for me was actually getting sick and quitting my job as a nurse. I had this title, registered nurse. You've gone through 5 years of school. You've been working in this profession for 2 years. Why would you throw away your career? You're a nurse. You're so good. You have a bunch of letters after your name. I threw that away. And I said, I'm not going back. And that was the start of me realizing how much doubt I had, how much fear I had in my body. But here's the crazy thing. Despite that, I still moved forward. I had crippling anxiety before. Crippling. And the only way I know that is because I don't have anxiety anymore. I still have some anxiety in certain aspects. Some of my friends would say I have more anxiety than I think I have. But compared to who I used to be, I was in a chronic traumatic response before. But I just kept showing up. I kept doing things to learn more about myself. Personality tests, plant medicine ceremonies, traveling the world, solo travel, tons of different body work in different modalities where I'd become more aware of my body, breath work, yoga, meditation, motorcycle rides. You name it, I probably tried it. You don't have to be as crazy as me. This is my journey. This is what I've done. I can't give anyone a prescription for how to cure low self-confidence, low self-appreciation. I can give you a path that I've taken, but essentially I would need to know your scenario and where you're at. But a lot of this has to do with changing the perspective of what's happened to you. Because as I started doing deeper and deeper work with myself related to appreciation, and I started looking back on my past, I actually started to realize the doubts that I had in my head related to my life were actually not true. That I had real world evidence to prove on the contrary that I was a worthy person. And I will say this, I have a video on this related to ancestral trauma, so a couple down, definitely check that one out. But if I didn't go on this self-development journey and really try and understand myself more and more, I would have never been able to release the trauma that's been in my family, that's been passed down generation after generation. And I had I don't know how to explain this, but I had a very, very, very heavy load to carry with my family. And I took it off for all of us. But I had to go through hell, not appreciating myself, and having doubt every single day, to the point where I had to show God that I was willing to do everything to change my reality and my family's reality. And that is real self-love. How many people have the balls to do that? And I know it's hard. You want to compare yourself to other people and how their life is, but we don't know what kind of skeletons, what kind of demons, what kind of heaviness they have to carry as well. So it's even really important to see that some people don't have to carry heaviness because other people might have done the work for them. But if you have heaviness now, it's likely that you have some weight to remove. And you do that by showing up for yourself, doing the hard things, doing the things that challenge you, doing the things you know you want to do, but you've been too afraid to do it, stepping into fear, making it happen, not waiting for when you get the next paycheck to do the thing you've always wanted to do, figuring out a way now. It's a process of developing trust that no matter what happens, you'll be taken care of. And a lot of us who have low self-worth started because maybe our caregivers didn't give us exactly what we felt we needed. It's not that they didn't give us adequate amounts. Maybe our perspective was off. For many people, they just got dealt a really shitty hand. But it doesn't matter how bad your hand has been dealt. There's always someone who had a worse hand. There's always someone who had a worse hand who is able to transmute their pain into their power. That is what life is about, especially if you're going through the thick of it. So if you are interested in doing deeper work, in embracing your shadow, in understanding yourself more, book or buy a Logos report below. And if you want to, if you feel inclined, you can book a call with me so we can go over the report together. The Logos test was super big for me because it actually allowed me to understand that I had very low self-appreciation. And it wasn't until last year that I figured this out. And I had done so much work on myself. I went to so many things. When I figured this out, I was able to hone all of my resources and all of my energy into just figuring out how I could appreciate and love myself more. And when I did that, I started finding the right people who could assist me and support me, not help me, support me. And from there, I was able to release some serious ancestral trauma. And I'm proud of myself for that. So if you want to start that, click the link, and I'll see you in the next one. Later.